Welcome to Reimagine 2021. This is our 11th monthly conference that we've been doing. Super excited to be here today. We host these events as part of our monthly series, bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in the space. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all of the above that's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today, Adam from the Mousebelt team, where we focus on early stage investments through our accelerator, or providing development support to a number of growing projects, as well as education within our Mousebelt University program. Our main objectives and goals are pretty simple. It's increasing adoption, use cases, and real-world applications. So thank you for tuning in. I'm joined here by a couple special guests. This is, I think, my first joint interview with two co-founders. I have Adam Jackson and Gabriel Luna-Ostaseski, co-founders of Braintrust. How you both doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us here. Excited to jam with you.
Awesome. So as I kind of mentioned, when we first met, Reimagine really is just kind of educating our audience, people that are wanting to learn, not just in the crypto space, but outside of our bubble. And that's what we're here to do. We've had over 500 interviews for the last 12 months. And, the demand for this type of content has just been strong and robust. And so I'm super excited to have both of you guys on. You've never been on before, so this is our first go around. So let's kind of get into it. I know you guys come from the Web 2 world. Now you guys are operating in the Web 3 world, which we'll get into, and I'm super excited because I don't think I've had anybody on with that kind of background, and so looking forward to getting into that. But first, and I'll let both of you pick on who wants to go first. But how did you both end up in blockchain? What was leading up to this path to Braintrust?
Gabe, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I think I bought Bitcoin back in 2013, but I really didn't know what I was buying. It was kind of just like taking a flyer on something, and then kind of lost track of it and got re-energized, I think, in 2017. And what started to get me really excited was as a non-engineer or a non-technical co-founder, I was trying to understand, like, where do I fit in this space? And I started to see like use cases emerge that weren't just pure like engineering or pure finance use cases. And so that's kind of where I started investing more, advising some projects, and just kind of like going down the rabbit hole, and then reconnected with my old friend Adam here, who we've known each other for 14 years, and we're jamming together. And he had this incredible idea, and I just wanted to get as close to it as I possibly could get.
Awesome. And Adam, I'll let you go ahead, but I feel like everybody kind of got into, not everybody, but I got in 2013 as well. That was my first experience on the Bitcoin side. I was in banking, and so everybody falls down this rabbit hole. But Adam, how about your story that led you into blockchain?
Yeah, sure. I have a friend, a longtime friend, who lives in Europe, who was one of the original online casino pioneers, and he told me about Bitcoin actually in 2011 because he started using it as digital cash, the original use case for it. So I bought some back then, again, like didn't understand the gravity of it, kind of forgot about it. And, probably sold it when it hit a couple thousand or something like that. I've been in and out of Bitcoin for a long time, but now I'm in, would never sell. But my background is investing and building in Web 2 marketplaces. And then, I sort of got into crypto full time in 2016. Got to participate in the Ethereum crowd sale, the Binance crowd sale, a bunch of other kind of cool things, many of which didn't work out, but all amazing experiments. And so I really got, like, when smart contracts came around, and that's what really hooked me. And this idea of, a token being the new organizational backbone for networks of people, sort of replacing the corporation, just became completely fascinating to me. And that's what I've been working on ever since.
No, it sounds great. And I'm really excited to get into it because the Web 2 world, I think people underestimate kind of the impact that that's had, and the history of the internet, centralization, extracting value from the users. And now we're really giving value back, to the client base, the users, people that are leveraging kind of the protocol itself. So let's talk a little bit about Braintrust, and I'll let you guys kind of divulge there from Web 2.0 and then how Web 3 like really impacts the type of concept that you're working on, which is it's a decentralized Upwork freelance, not only that, but finding talent. But it's so interesting because everybody wanted to decentralize everything, Uber, Twitter, and all this stuff, right? And you guys actually targeted a market leveraging talent, and it's really competitive. And you guys know from a dev team how tough it is to find engineers, to find developers, people in the crypto space and whatnot. So I'll let you guys get into. My question is Web 2.0, Web 3.0, and Braintrust, and kind of what led you to Braintrust.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you, even as helpful context, like if you go in the rewind machine even a little further and you kind of look at the history of the web and you say like, okay, well, Web 1.0 was really around, I'll say like connecting people, but it was very much the Wild West, right? There was no trust, there was no payments, there was no escrow services, things like that, right? But it was still this kind of like fundamental shift, being able to connect people that didn't know each other from all around the world to transact. And then what you saw in Web 2.0 was kind of the introduction of a few kind of novel innovations. Like one was escrow services, two was payments, three was clearly like the mobile phone, like a new delivery device. And then a new business model, which in the marketplace world was essentially own the transaction and take a rake or a transaction fee out of that, right? And that gave rise to many of the Web 2 marketplaces that we know today, right? Ranging from StubHub to Airbnb and Uber and kind of everything in between. And listen, those have been the dominant business models of the last, 2 decades. And what you see happening in that was like, Adam and I together, I think we've invested and advised over 100 Web 2 marketplaces and built as well. And so when you're on the front lines of that, what you see is kind of like, I'll say the dirty little secrets. And the dirty little secret of all of these Web 2 marketplaces is essentially that they build enterprise value by extracting the maximum amount of value from their users in the form of a take rate or a fee, right? And what that does at scale is it puts the users at odds with the operator. And you can see that it's across the board in every Web 2 marketplace. The drivers hate Uber, the Dashers hate DoorDash, like across the board. So when your users hate the operator, like the writing's on the wall. It's just a matter of time till something comes along and kind of disintermediates. And so what we were witnessing over these past few years is basically flipping that old model on its head. In Web 3, instead of centralizing, the goal is to decentralize. Instead of maximizing fees, the goal is to minimize fees. And instead of concentrating governance, the goal is to decentralize governance and give power back to the users. And so I view that shift as like this fundamental shift in the way in which these businesses are done. And one analogy that I've used in the past is kind of like the shift from like software being sold on-prem with multi-year contracts to software being sold by the month and hosted in the cloud. And so this new business model of user-owned and user-governed has such strong incentives. It's just a matter of time for it to start eating into all of these Web 2 marketplaces that extract disproportionate rents from their users.
And what is Braintrust?
Yeah, Adam, you want to cover that one?
Yeah, so Braintrust is a decentralized talent network that connects knowledge workers, mostly tech, so engineers, designers, developers, product managers, with companies, typically Fortune 1000, that have insatiable demand for them. So that marketplace model is in and of itself not new. The way the network is constructed, owned, and controlled is completely new. So instead of a for-profit seeking company in the middle, like an Upwork or a Fiverr, whose job it is to connect supply and demand, and then take as much of that fee as possible in the form of a rake, right? They're rake maximizing businesses. Braintrust is the opposite. It's a network it's a series of smart contracts and software that essentially replace the for-profit entity, Upwork or Fiverr or whatever, even staffing firms like Accenture. And it's controlled, the future of the smart contracts and the rules of the network are controlled by token holders. And so there's no equity, there's no company in the middle, just like there's no company that runs Bitcoin and no company that runs Ethereum. They are in fact run by many nodes. Braintrust is the same. It's run by, the talent essentially are the nodes of the network. And the future of Braintrust is controlled through on-chain and off-chain governance, one token, one vote. And so when you've replaced the for-profit entity in the middle with software, you can then change the rake. You can lower the rake to zero. So we charge talent a flat 0% fee, and our clients pay a 10% fee. And that's basically just to sustain network operations. And so when you bring the rake down like that, you enable a couple things. One, instead of a rake eroding network effects and incentivizing people to disintermediate the operator of the network, you actually have the opposite case, right? We actually have what I call a negative rake, where the more you contribute positively to the marketplace, the more tokens you earn, the more control over the network you have. And so what that enables is much larger, more interesting ongoing projects. So on an Upwork or Fiverr, you're talking about an average job size of a few $100s. On Braintrust, it's something like $76,000, like massive ongoing projects for the likes of Nike, Goldman Sachs, Porsche, Nestle. And so what that means is folks that don't want to work at, in a cube farm in Mountain View anymore, or, have a W-2 job at a staffing firm and sort of, go where they're told and have no autonomy, can now unbundle out of that corporate environment and be their own boss, be their own freelancer, and work for whom, when they want to, from where they want to, at a rate that they think is fair. And we publish all the global rates. There's none of this geographic arbitrage where, a client pays $150 an hour, but the guy, in the Philippines makes $20 an hour. None of that stuff, right? That's all flattened out through this transparent model at Braintrust.
No, that's fantastic. And you touched on a little bit, the tokenomics. Can you explain a little bit how you earn tokens, who's getting the tokens, who are the stakeholders, and then two, how you guys have a unique node functionality. If you can talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So the way you get the token is you help build the network, simply. Now, there's dozens of ways to do that, but the most popular ways are inviting talent, helping screen that talent, making sure those folks are who they say they are, et cetera, or bringing on clients. We have a user type on the network called connector. So they're not here to hire, they're not here to do the work, they're actually here to just connect. So like think recruiters, and those folks are rewarded tokens for bringing new clients to the network. And so that's primarily how you earn tokens. There's dozens of other ways you can earn tokens, but those are the big ones. And so that's growing and curating supply and demand. Those are the main functions of usually thousands of employees in a marketplace business, right? If you go to Uber's office in San Francisco, most of the people in that office are doing that, building supply, building demand. In our case, we have the community doing it. It's not a centrally controlled system, it's decentralized. And then the way you use the token is, primarily governance. There's also features. We have staking features that are under development. So it's not like Ethereum staking where you're earning bonuses for locking your tokens up. In our world, it's different. It's staking tokens along with your bid in order to increase the likelihood that you win the business, or clients who are trying to attract more qualified talent to their job will award some tokens for qualified proposals. Right. So we think of tokens, in our utility token world, tokens are used to unstick parts of the flywheel, right? If all marketplaces have a strong flywheel, tokens are a great way to help ease the friction, alleviate the friction in a flywheel. So another example would be like, it's a kind of a big ask to have talent come to Braintrust and create a profile and verify their work history. There's like a good hour of work there. Sometimes it could be shorter, but and so that's a friction point where, we might award tokens for completing that and getting people through it faster. So that's how we think about token economics at Braintrust.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. And the governance, the voting, the vetting, how has that been operating? I mean, for our audience tuning in, you guys have been around for a few years, Braintrust. How has that been? How's that operation? How's the flow? And then more importantly, how has the vetting of talent, how does that, how do you get good quality talent in there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing would be like when we were first starting this, there was countless people that were saying like, who cares governance? Like, why does that matter? and like in many companies, as a shareholder, especially a small shareholder, like it frankly doesn't matter. If you're running your business on a platform, you care quite a bit about the fee structure and how the network runs and how it expands. There's countless of examples of this in Web 2 that basically like the platform makes a decision that has enormous adverse effects to drivers or dashers or whatever it may be. So in our case, governance matters quite a lot. And we've seen this kind of explosion of governance proposals just in this last 4 weeks or so. And this happens primarily in Discord is kind of like the first step is anyone in the community can propose something for governance and they have to put up some tokens to be able to propose. And then there's a huge amount of discussion that happens in dedicated Discord channels where people debate the positives, the negatives, the externalities of a decision like this. And then if it kind of gets to a critical mass, then it goes into kind of a temperature check function on Snapchat, where people actually have to connect their MetaMask wallet or whatever the wallet is, and actually vote with their tokens. And again, it's a one token, one vote system. So there's a strong incentive to both like earn tokens and hold them. And then it actually will go through a next stage of governance, and then a final stage of like on-chain governance and then implementation. And so we've seen, I forget what the exact number is, but let's say 5 to 10 of these things go through just in the last 4 weeks. That had wide range of activities ranging from staking to fees, categories, things like that. And it's all publicly available. Anyone can view it in Discord or on Snapchat, on Snapchat.
Not a lot of governance happening on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Very little. Blockchain and crypto, as we all know, community driven, network driven, contacts, relationships, everybody working together for a common goal. What have you noticed about the Braintrust community, the participants, the engagement that maybe has surprised you, or that has led to some good success in a short period of time when people were trying to decentralize everything, but they used to say build it and they will come, right? And that wasn't so true. Like you first needed a community, build that up, trust, and so what have you noticed, I guess, from your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things that are approaches that we've done things intentionally different. Number one is in the beginning, we focused on building a sustainable and successful network with product market fit. And so that was our primary objective, basically from 2018 to the beginning of 2020, was building a functional platform and also building, enough liquidity on both sides that the marketplace worked and generated transactions and had high NPS. And that's, I frankly, like, that's again, my point of view, but I saw a lot of projects that basically like built community and then never got to actually a successful network. And so we took a very different tack there, and we're really successful in doing that, and then started to layer on more and more community and governance functions after that. And so I think the advantage to that is like when people show up to the network, it's not like an idea. It's not a blog article. Like this is a network that has 100 of the Fortune 1000 companies hiring. There's tens of thousands of community people that have already been there and been hired. And so what we saw was really interesting is like when we hit mainnet in beginning of September, we went from about 1,000 people in our community to over 150,000 in less than 4 weeks.
Wow.
And so what you see happening now is like, people get attracted to projects that are already having success and that are, proven models that they can then plug into. And frankly, you can just accomplish a whole lot more then because there's a clear direction, where you're going, and also, kind of what works.
And why do you think it's interesting? You guys are working with, like you said, Fortune 100 companies. Yeah. And in the crypto space, people are trying, in the blockchain space, are trying to get to enterprises, institutions, various big players. Talk about kind of the demand from the traditional side and what you've noticed there. And that's that's already a big win there in it,
Yep.
in itself. So talk about a little about those relationships using and leveraging Braintrust.
I mean, a couple things. Either one of us can touch on.
Go ahead, Gabe.
So I think, it wasn't a guess of why we picked this category. Like, it's $1.5 trillion market continuing to grow every single year. And so the opportunity is really to become the global protocol for internet labor. And what you see happening in global enterprise is that they're dealing with the Great Resignation, and they're also dealing with a battle for technical talent that is unwinnable, especially if you're a Fortune 1 company in Lansing, Michigan, or St. Louis, Missouri, and you're trying to.
Oh, did we lose Gabe? Adam, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I think
Okay.
we lost Gabe.
Here, I'll pick up and we can have him come back. Kind of tacking on, like the whole, like, these enterprise companies actually don't care about blockchain. Let's be really clear, right? They care about things that can be made better for them because of blockchain, right? And so Nike, there was an article in Protocol about the Braintrust Network a couple of weeks ago. Tomio Jaron wrote really in-depth analysis, and he was saying the headline was, Nike uses blockchain now and probably doesn't even know it. And the reason is because Nike is drawing talent off the Braintrust network. Why? Because there are talent on Braintrust that they can't get anywhere else. Oh, and they're not paying this giant marketplace fee or some ridiculous markup from a staffing agency, right? And so they're like, hey, you've got talent we can't get, and you've got it at amazing prices, and we can directly interact with them. No BS, walled garden stuff. Cool, we're in. Oh, is that powered by blockchain? Great. Then we love blockchain, right? Like, that's the thing, is there's people in the space, a lot of us who have been early to this love the technology. We love what it stands for, all the freedom, the disintermediation of corrupt institutions, I think, is like the core of what gets all of us early people in blockchain excited. But corporate America doesn't give a shit about any of that, right? They have to see real value. And so that's, I think, a great use case.
And what about the UI UX component? We had a portfolio project as well, like completely remove blockchain from their pitch, from their deck, right? Like, it's just a tool, in the stack, but we have a business model, and that's what we're going to talk about, right? And blockchain just happens to be a component, part of the piece. How do you see the UI UX? That was a big issue in blockchain crypto, just in general. How have you guys targeted kind of that flow? And I'm assuming you kind of just brought in the front end from what we're used to, few clicks, the onboarding process. Can you explain when someone goes to Braintrust from either end, a talent seeker or somebody looking for employment? What does that flow look like?
Yeah, UI UX is critical in this space, right? It needs to be easy to use, and like Web 2 got that right. Like, think about what Airbnb did for user experience in the vacation rentals market. When I say user experience, I don't just mean a pretty app and a pretty website. I mean, like, there's insurance for when you rent your place out. There's curation for these types of guides that can help you have a great experience in your new city. Like, Airbnb is obsessed with user experience, and it ended up consolidating the entire super fragmented, often scammy vacation rental market, right? And so user experience has to be more than just UI and pixels. It has to be like how the users feel about using the service. And so crypto has a lot of room to improve on user experience, right? And look, I think, let's give credit where it's due, right? I think Coinbase has done a great job of improving the user experience, of onboarding new folks, right? Not everyone wants to be their own bank, like, I think it's cool, right? I mean, it's a cool idea, whatever, but like, that's not right for mainstream consumers. And it's certainly not right for enterprises, right? Big companies don't want to hold keys, right? They want to use qualified custodians, right? And so thank goodness Fidelity and Bakkt and Coinbase and Gemini are great players in this space. And so With Braintrust, it's the same thing, right? Our clients may be interacting with crypto, every time they use Braintrust, but there's no reason to like clobber them over the head and like force them to use MetaMask and stuff like that.
Fantastic. And maybe Adam, maybe this is to you on the technical side of things. All these moving parts, you guys are developed on Ethereum, or I'm sorry, SKALE or Ethereum? Both, right? Talk about kind of the decision there, the congestion, the network, infrastructure. What did you guys envision, and how has the evolution gone from when you guys kicked this thing off, a few years back to where you're at now, and what was that journey like? It's been tough, right? There's a lot of competition, a lot of various chains. Everybody's battling for users and dApps. What was your experience in choosing a technology, and how has that panned out?
Yeah, sure. So with Web3, decentralization has varying technical decentralization has varying degrees of importance based on which category you're in. So in DeFi, it's super important, right? Like the thing needs to be decentralized top to bottom, both the front interface, the protocols, anything happening off chain, super important, right? Because, they're challenging, really highly regulated banking systems, and decentralization matters. With what we're doing, it matters a bit less. So, our tokens are the main business rules for the network, all the governance, that's all ERC20. That's all, we forked even Compound's Governor Alpha, which, Compound and Uniswap both run for on-chain governance. We didn't want to reinvent that wheel. So the important stuff is on-chain for us. Like some of the like matching engine and stuff, happens today just in Python, Postgre, moving to SKALE, right? Because that stuff can't and shouldn't be on chain. When picking a layer one, it's amazing now to see the progress like Solana and chains like that have made. When we had to pick one, a year or two ago, there was no choice, right? It was like Ethereum was the dead obvious answer because nobody uses Definity or Tezos or things like that, right? Even though I have tremendous respect for those projects and they're really creative and they have different trade-offs than Ethereum does. If you want enterprise grade custodians and 30,000 ecosystem developers and dozens of wallets, the Ethereum ecosystem is the only choice, right? Now, look, I think today, like Solana, is super interesting in that, and they're, a really credible alternative to Ethereum.
And are you set up, or will you just cross that path, interoperability, cross-chain, solutions? Are you guys set up for that, like in the future, or have that in mind when developing, the evolution of Braintrust Network?
Yeah, it's something we'll always keep our eye on. Cross-chain interoperability isn't required for most layer threes. Although, like if you look at Audius has an interesting architecture where they use, the ERC20 is for the bank and Solana for the other stuff. Yeah, I could see us, sort of doing something similar. SKALE is sort of bridging that for us. They have a really interesting or a scalable architecture that way, and can do cross-chain stuff.
Yeah, no, I think they're fantastic. They're actually part of the Reimagine conference. They've been on a few times, and they offered their location for on-site filming, so that was kind of cool. Great team. They're working on a lot of things. What
we have an office there too. We're right next to them.
Oh, Shack 15?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were just there last week, kicking off all these interviews, and great spot. Great people coming in to discuss, what we're talking about here. So the topic of the theme of the conference is around NFTs, DAOs, and Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, government kind of influence on crypto and Bitcoin. This kind of ties into some DAOs and kind of this obviously decentralized, aspect of business. What are you seeing the future of, this type of use case? DAOs, decentralization, not only in the talent seeking spot, but do you see other use cases as well?
Yeah, I'm sure we have both perspectives here. I think that, at a fundamental level, if you think about the evolution of Web 2 to Web 3, granted that the things in Web 3 might not just be they might not just be ported over from Web 2. They might be new versions of it, or like iterations or slices of it. But I think the whole concept of these Web 3 projects is that they are decentralized, autonomous organizations, right? And so I view it almost as one in the same. The DAO is just the kind of the organizing of Web 3 projects. And so, yeah, so I think there's a lot of really interesting experimentation here. And, I mean, frankly, that's always been the goal for us, is building a decentralized autonomous organization and a decentralized network. And that's what we've always been building. We just didn't call it a DAO.
For sure. I think early on. Adam, you have thoughts on DAOs moving forward and kind of how you see them operating?
Yeah. I mean, Governor Alpha is in itself a DAO, right? I mean, anytime, if you think about it, Compound has been operating a DAO basically since day one. And we forked all the same code. You have to be kind of technical to interact with it. So I would say that's like one of the limitations. I think this next iteration of the term DAO that we're living through right now, I think what gets people excited is like non-technical folks being able to participate. And so, I'm an investor in a few projects that are helping facilitate that sort of infrastructure. I think it's awesome. I think, disintermediating gatekeepers of capital has always been something I've been super passionate about. Gabe and I have never liked our mandatory trips to Sand Hill Road we've been making for the last decade and a half. And, frankly, I don't think most of those folks are qualified to gatekeep that capital. And so, not to say every DAO is going to be a smashing success with amazing IRR and, benchmark style returns, but, more capital flowing to more creative people, and doing so in a transparent way on blockchain-based DAOs can only be good for innovation, right? It's a super exciting thing.
What do you see like the next disruption around DAOs and kind of this decentralization aspect? Do you see any other verticals or other industries that maybe you've kept an eye on that this is going to impact?
Any industry that extracts disproportionate rents from their users is and will be susceptible to this new model.
Yeah, I think, any Web 2 marketplace where one or more sides of the marketplace hates the operator, that creates excellent opportunity for disruption. And so, I go back to my there's a spectrum of web-enabled marketplaces where on one end you have very high fee extracting, eroding their own network effects, all the way to, hey, the fee they extract is probably commensurate with the value they provide. And so on this side, I'd put Airbnb again, I think they provide as much value as they extract or more. On the other side, you look at Uber, DoorDash, these companies that force restaurants into gross margins, steal their tips from their dashers. The gig economy is just this expose of new exploitative ways that technology can steal from poor people, essentially working class. So I think it won't be terribly long before every package, person, and thing delivered to your house is done so by a driver who owns part of the network that they work for.
And I think kind of what you guys are working on, this concept, is really, how do you see it attracting like top talent? You guys are already providing top talent to the network. What do you think this decentralized aspect does to somebody as a user or looking for employment? Why would they be more attracted to this? And you kind of summed it up a little bit in terms of ownership, more control, and I think you guys could probably elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of our guiding force here has always been to make working on Braintrust better than getting a full-time job, and also better than hiring someone full-time. And so, like, if you start there, then what do? You have to unpack that, right? So you say, like, well, why would somebody take a full-time job? Well, they would take it for like continuity, right? Like knowing that or at least the theory is, you have a safe paycheck, but there is like some level of consistency there, right? The second component would be that like you feel a part of something, right? You collaborate, you feel part of something bigger than yourself. And then I would say like, the third part is like working on something that you really enjoy and like having good incentives, right? Earning money or stock options or whatever those things may be, right? So if you unpack those components, you say like, well, what if like you could have long-term jobs with the best, like the biggest brands in the world. You could set your own rates and keep 100% of the value without somebody taking a huge chunk out of your paycheck. Oh, and guess what? Like you could also be a part of building the future and actually have a voice in governance. Like, and granted, there's more things that we're going to stack on top of that. But if coming out of school, like instead of getting an entry-level job, imagine if you just joined Braintrust and you could work from wherever you wanted in the world, doing the work you love on your own terms, and also like earning more than you could earn in a W-2, like that's when this thing starts to flip.
And it seems like with Braintrust, what that allows and the people that are looking, they can work for whoever they want. They can work for, a Nike and Adidas, or, tech company A, tech company B, and really kind of leverage their talents and skill sets for each employer for certain projects.
I mean, listen, we've got like companies in every major category, right? We've got everything from Twitter to Porsche to Nestle and Goldman Sachs, right? Like we've got representatives of the biggest companies in every single industry. And so, and also like all of these core roles ranging from product to engineering and design, and obviously more categories to be added as well.
Do you see kind of this DAO infrastructure being like an alternative to an LLC, a new legal entity that people will just operate in and do deals with, investment DAOs and various social DAOs and all that? Do you see kind of this new framework as a way to do business amongst your community and invest your time that way?
The DAO is definitely the new LLC. There's no question, historically speaking. We're in this transition period though, where like code is law until it's not, right? It's like there's only so many things you can settle in a smart contract. Now, eventually, probably everything, but as long as there's a real world and there's fiat money and there's on-ramps and off-ramps, you need a connection between the DAO and your local jurisdiction. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. That's why I'm so impressed with places like Wyoming that have, they're absolute pioneers in this space, right? You can form an LLC, like an actual LLC in the state of Wyoming, and have its owners or members be Ethereum smart contract addresses. That's freaking cool, right? There's a judge in Wyoming that said, cool, that's all right, we'll enforce that. That's a big deal. And so, it's important for compliance and taxation, all these things, but it's amazing to see how quickly that's moving.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Wyoming's leading the charge there, across the jurisdiction landscape, and especially in the States with a few other cities. But yeah, Wyoming's definitely kind of, leading the way. Another topic, not to move so quick, but NFTs. How have you guys seen that play out? That's kind of, DeFi summer last year. Now we got DAO booms and NFT booms. Real quick on kind of what's going on from your thoughts and opinions on the NFT market.
I love art, right? And so like, I think this is a new way for people to both own and distribute and co-own art in its current iteration. Obviously, there's a bunch more implementations of this kind of use case in the future. So like, I love that, like two things. One, I love that like people nerd out on stuff, whether it's coffee or wine or cars or watches, whatever it is, like this human desire to collect things, it has been around since we collected rocks and will be around till the end of time. And I think this is just a modern implementation of that, which I think is cool. And then also I love seeing creators get more of the value that they create. Traditionally, artists have been exploited by art houses and people kind of sitting in the middle in the same way that freelancers have. So I view those folks as our brethren. And I wish them well. And I'd love to see more artists earn sustainable incomes and be able to create beauty in the world.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I would tack on that, NFTs they're a new primitive of the digital economy, right? So if you think about like kind of these, crypto punks or like, $250,000 pictures of rocks or whatever, like these are sort of interesting blips. The same way, like, remember 15 years ago, somebody made the $1 million homepage where they had 1 million squares sold for $1, whatever it was. And like,
Yeah.
that was like a nonsensical thing. That's our version of like a rock, right? An NFT rock that someone would pay 200 grand for. But what ended up, he ended up being very prescient because it was like, oh, this is sort of the beginning of like interactive commerce and commerce through community and scarcity. And right, it was almost like a precursor for digital scarcity, right? And so that's what NFTs, it's not just for digital art, right? It'll be for provenance of everything. And especially if the metaverse actually takes off, which like chances are probably that's the next big thing, NFTs will be the core primitive behind that.
And one last question, actually, kind of take it back and we'll conclude here. We'll wrap it up in a few minutes. What's needed or what's required for DAOs or decentralized kind of dApps to go more mainstream? Is this more infrastructure? Is this just kind of time? DAO starter kits, you guys were in the early days and you guys wrapped it up and kind of, forked some things, took some things, some ideas. What do you see is kind of some barriers or what's necessary for people to come in and kind of ramp up and build their own kind of decentralized dApp or DAO?
I mean, I think the thing that's so unique and also an amazing canvas for entrepreneurship in this space is like composability, right? In the fact that you can now piece together things so fast. And if you look at Adam, you can tell me if you agree with this comparison, but like if you look at the world of like SaaS applications today, like you used to have to build all of those things, right? And now there's like Twilio, right? You can like pay by the text message. And there's BI tools. There's basically all of these components that you can basically rent by the month or by the use. And so I think that is the proliferation of projects that provide the infrastructure then enables entrepreneurs to build things faster than they've ever built before. And guess what? You now have like the faster distribution of these ideas through Telegram, through Discord, through these like established crypto channels. And so what I think is really cool is that like entrepreneurs and or teams or communities will be able to build and distribute things faster than has ever been possible before.
Yeah, it's on the technical side, it's composability, as Gabe's saying, right? The having underlying layers of complexity hardened and then abstracted away for the next layer of innovation, right? We think about layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 in our world. We couldn't do what Braintrust does at layer 3 without all of the amazing cryptography at layer 1 here with Ethereum, and layer 2 is SKALE. And then second, we're moving from hierarchical corporate environments to networks, right? Flat networks. And so just what Gabe was saying, innovation won't always just come from some corporate committee, who says like, we need a new style of sneaker and here's how we're going to think about it. It'll come from, it'll be crowd created. And now you have a money layer, to reward outcomes.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's always just a question, for entrepreneurs, founders, people that are tuning in to Reimagine, kind of understanding the landscape, the environment of how to whip up a project. It does take, some research, some understanding, but as you mentioned, Gabe, like the infrastructure, what's available now, provides a little bit more, resourcefulness to start building, right? And not focus on, like you said, building from scratch.
Never been a better time to be a builder or an entrepreneur or a creative. This is like, we're watching the future get created. And so I would encourage people to dive in and start. You'll learn more operating within a DAO or volunteering or contributing in a month than you will in 6 months of reading about this stuff.
For sure. Very hands-on, engaging, participating. Those are kind of the keys to success. Where can our audience and viewers learn more about Braintrust? Where can they follow and get more information?
Yeah, sure. So we're at braintrust.com is the main website. And on there, you can learn everything about governance, how the token is designed, how to earn. You can also sign up as talent, a connector, or as a company looking to hire. Or you can also catch our social channels from the main course site. So if you're a developer or want to be involved in the really active community, you could join us on Discord. Or if you just want to follow along on our social channels, you can welcome to do that. So that's a great jumping off point.
Perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and conclude here. For all of you tuning in to Reimagine, thank you for taking the time out to listen to this discussion. I was joined here by Adam Jackson and Gabe Luna-Ostaseski, co-founders at Braintrust. Thank you both for being on. We hope to have you back soon.
Thanks for having us, Adam. Good to see you.
Thanks for having us. Take good
All
care.
right. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody, and hopefully you're enjoying the conference.